Hello everyone, my name is Ashish and you are watching another WebGuy YouTube channel, and in this video we are going to build this beautiful carousel using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So without wasting any time, let's get started. If you have not yet subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell icon so that you don't miss any of our videos. So before we start coding, let's see what are the elements we have. You can see that we have a dark background, and over that we have a nice image, and here we have some text, and we have got two buttons, and there are some dots here which indicate the position of our carousel, and there's a timer through which we can automatically rotate through the images, and we can also click on these buttons here to change the image. So now let's open our code editor and start building this project. So we have now opened our Visual Studio Code editor, and on the right side you can see the final thing which we are going to build, and I forgot to tell you that it is completely responsive. You can see here when I change the browser size, you can see that the carousel automatically adapts itself to the screen size, and you can see that. Now let's go over to our folder structure. We have a index.html file, then we have a style.css file, and we have a script.js file. And here in the img folder, we have got three images which we'll be using for the carousel. If you want to follow along, the link to all these resource files are given with the video, so you can download it from there. Now let's go on to the index.html file. Here we can close our Explorer pane, and I also have an extension called live server running so that we can see our changes in real time. And here we can see all the changes in real time without having to press the reload button again and again. We'll first put an exclamation sign and we'll press tab. This is the emit abbreviation for the boilerplate. So in the body tag, we'll make a div having an ID of carousel. Now inside this, we'll make another div having an ID of container. And inside this, we'll make two more divs for our text and the image. You can see here that we have the text container and an image container. So we'll make two more divs for the text and the image container. And let's make the image container. So we have some basic structure here. After that, we also want these buttons and we want these dots. So let's make a div for these buttons and also another div for storing these dots. So inside the div having an ID of carousel, we will make two more divs for the controls and the dots. So we'll give an ID of control, and we'll make another div with the ID of dots. So this is the structure we are going to follow. Inside this text container div, we'll make a paragraph element having a class of tagline. And here we'll write 13-inch model. Then we'll make a h1 element having an ID of main heading. And here we'll write MacBook Pro. I don't know whether these images I have used are of actual MacBook Pro or not, and I'm not even concerned. I just want to show you the process of creating the carousel. So again, we'll make another P element having a class of tagline again. Sorry, this should be tagline. Now here we'll write power and moves. Inside the div image container, we will make three image tags. So we can do img into 3. I also want to give them a class of first slides and then slide animation for the animation part. Now we'll copy this and paste it 2 more times. And now we have our 3 images in place. Now in the controls div, we will create these navigation buttons here. So first let's make a paragraph element having an ID of prev, and we'll give it a class of control button. Now here we want to use the less than symbol to make our control button. But the issue is that if we use the less than or greater than symbol in HTML, then it might mix up with our tags. These characters are reserved in HTML and are known as character entities. So to access these entities, we need to use the entity names or entity numbers. The entity name for less than sign is ampersand and then LT. And this should give us a less than sign. Let's see. And you can see here. Now we'll copy and paste this line, and then we'll change the ID to next. And we'll change the entity to greater than sign. So we have now a less than sign and a greater than sign, and we can use this for our control buttons. Now let's come out of the dots. We will be dynamically creating these dots depending on the images. So the number of images we have, those many dots will create, but we need to style them. So I'll just create 1 dot for representational purpose. So we'll say P and we'll give it an ID of dots. And that's it. Now we can start writing the CSS. So before we do that, we have to link the CSS file into the HTML document. So I'll use the link tag, and here I'll see style.css. Let's link the JavaScript file as well so that we can move on to JavaScript file when we complete the CSS. And here we'll write script.js. JS. And that's it. Now let's go on to the CSS file. Now for the fonts, I'll be using Roboto and Open Sans from Google Fonts. So let's go to Google Fonts. Google Fonts. And here we'll select Roboto. Now I want the regular version of it. And I also want Open Sans. So here you can see we have Open Sans. So select Open Sans. Now let's come on to the selected families, and here let's come on to the embed tag, and here we'll use the import method. So we'll just copy this import statement and we can paste it here. That's it. We can now use the Roboto and Open Sans font in our document. If you don't know how to use it, you can just open the selected families again, and you can see here that the CSS rules to specify the families are given here. I'll close this for now, and I'll close this tab as well. Now let's select the complete document through our universal selector, and here we'll say box sizing, border box, and we'll also say margin and padding to 0. Now let's select the body tag, and here we'll give the background color of 535353, and this will give us a nice gray background. Now we'll select the div having an ID of container. You must remember that we made a div having an ID of container, and now I have selected it, and we can do height of 75 VH. VH is the CSS unit which stands for viewport height. So now our container has a height of 75 viewport height. You cannot see it obviously because we haven't given any color to it. So let's give it a background color of 121212, and it will be a little dark. So now you can see we have got the container div which has 75% of the height of the viewport. Now we want to make it a flex box because you can see that we have a text element and we have an image element, as you can see here. And when we expand it, we can see that the text element and the image element are side by side. So for that we need to convert this container div into a flex box. So let's give it a display of flex. Display of flex. And let's set align items to center. And let's say justify content to center. So now you can see that the container div is now a flex box, and you can see that the images are here, and you can also see the text items. Let me show you. Just wait. And you can see that the text is here, but right now it looks ridiculous. So we are going to fix that in just a second. Don't worry about it. We are using the mobile first approach to create this carousel. That means we'll be coding for mobiles first, and then we'll be moving on to desktop by using media queries. So for that we want the flex direction to be column. So I'll say flex direction column. Right now we can't see anything, but we'll fix that in a moment. So now let's go on to the image container. Here we'll set its height to 100%. And we'll set the padding. We'll set the top padding to 0. Then we'll set the right padding to 2 rem. Then the bottom padding to 5 rem. And we'll set the left padding to 2 rem. Now we want the images also to be in a flexbox model. So we'll say display flex again. You will understand why I'm doing this in a moment. Just wait a second. Again, we will center everything. So we'll say align items center. Center. And we'll say justify content center. So that's it. You can see here that we have all our images in one line. Now let's select these images. So I'll say image container, and I'll select the img tag from there, and we'll set the max height to 80%, and we'll set the max width to 80%. Now things are getting in order, and you can see that we have our text here. You can also see that we have all our 3 images here, but those are not visible properly. So we are going to fix that in a second. Now let's come on to our text container. Here we want to give it a height of 100%. Then we want to give it a padding. We'll give the top padding of 5 rem. Then we'll give the right padding of 2 rem. Then the bottom padding of 0 and the right padding of 2 rem. You may need to work around these values. I have already built it once, so I know what the values are for adjusting the padding and margin. But of course, when you are creating something from scratch, you need to experiment these values. Now we'll say again display flex, because we want this in a flexbox model, and you can see here that we have got the flexbox model. Now we'll set the flex direction to column. And now we'll do align items center and justify content center. This is a nice trick to center anything in CSS, and I use it all the time. You can convert anything into a flexbox model, and then you can center it by using align items and justify content. Now let's grab this text from the text container and we'll style this. So we'll say tagline class. And here we'll say the font family to Open Sans. And we'll set the default to sans serif. Now I'll set the color to say DDD. And we'll set the font size to 1.5 rem. Now let's go on to our main heading. We know that we have given it an ID of main heading, so we'll grab that and we'll set the font family to Roboto. Let's set the fallback font to sans serif. Now we'll give it a font weight of 400. Next we'll give it a color of DDD, that is same as our tagline, and we'll give it a font size of 3 rem. Now we'll go on to our index.html file, and from here we'll remove the comment from our images. So we have all our images now. Now you can see that we have given it a class of slides. So we'll select the class of slides. And we'll give it a display of none. We want to set the display as none because we want to display it right now, and we will display it dynamically through JavaScript. Now next, let's style our control buttons. So for that, we will select the controls div. And here we'll give it a padding of 0.5 rem. After that, we'll give it a width of 100%. Now let's give it a position of absolute. We will give it a top of 50%. Now we'll do a transform and we'll do translate y to minus 50%. Now you can see that the controls are now at the center of the screen, but we don't want it to be at the center of the screen. We want it to be in the center of the carousel. So we will give the carousel div a position of relative. So for that, we have a div having an ID of carousel here, and we will set its position to relative. We are doing this because when we give a position of absolute to any element, its position gets absolute to the nearest position parent. So here we can see that the controls div is inside the carousel div. So that's why its nearest parent is carousel div. And that's why we are setting the position of the carousel to relative, so that the controls div is absolute to the carousel and not to the screen. Because if we don't set the position of the carousel to relative, then the position of the controls is relative to the complete root element, that is the complete body, and we don't want that, and we want it to be the center of the carousel. That's why we have given the position relative to the carousel div. Now let's get back to the controls div again, and here we will set its display to flex because we want both the items to be in a flexbox model. And you can see now we have both the angle brackets here, and we will set its property of justify content to space between. And now you can see that both the angle brackets are positioned to the sides the way how we want. Now let's give it a color of DDD. We will also set the font size, and we'll give it a value of 2.5 rem. And we don't want it to be selected by the user like this. So for that, we will set user select none. Now let's grab these control buttons, and we want to give them a little padding so that they are not just sticking to the sides. So we'll do prev and next, and we'll give it a padding of say 0.3 rem. And you can see that we have got a nice little padding here. Now we can set some hover states. So we'll do prev hover, and we'll also do next hover. And when we hover over it, we want the cursor to be pointer. So we'll set the cursor to pointer. Now we'll set the color same as the background color, and we'll give it a background color of DDD. And let's give it a border radius of 3 pixels. And you can see we are getting a nice effect here. We can also set the transition inside this prev and next ID. So we'll set the transition to all, and we'll set it to 0.2 seconds. And you can see that we have got a nice little transition here. Now let's create the dots for our images. Sorry, we need to give it a class of dots. Class, and we don't want it dots because we already have an ID of dots, so we'll give it a class of dot. First we'll grab the dot container that is having an ID of dots. Then we want it to convert it to flex model, so we will set the display property as flex. Okay, let me first give it a border so that you can see what's happening. So let's give it a border of 1 px, and we'll set it solid, and we'll set it white. We will delete this border property. We are just doing it so that we can see what's happening here. Let's give it a width of 100%, and we'll also give it a height of say 10 pixels. We don't want this height. We are just doing this so that you can see what's happening. Now we want this dots div to be inside our carousel. So for that, we will set its position to absolute and we'll set its top property to 95%. And you can see now the dots div is somewhere here. Now let's take our dot class. You can see that we have this dot class here. So we'll say dot and then we'll do a margin of 0.3 rem. Let's give it a width of say 0.8 rem. Then we'll give it a height of 0.8 rem as well. And we'll give it a border radius of 50% so that we can convert it to a circle. Now let's give it a background color. Again DDD. And you can see we have our dot here. We can now delete this border property. And we can also delete this height property here. Now we want our dot to be at the center. So for that we will give justify content center. And you can see that the dot is now at the center. Actually, we don't want to give it a background color. We only want the background color for the image which is active. So for example, if we are showing the first image, only the first dot should be active. And if we are showing the second image, the second dot should be active. So for that, we will remove this background color and we will give it the border. Let's give the border of 1 pixel and let's say solid and DDD. And you can see now we have created a beautiful dot. We will create an active class. Now we will add this active class through JavaScript. Right now we'll just add the active class here so that you can see what's happening. Inside this we will give it a background color. Of DDD. Let's give it a box shadow as well. 0, 0. Give it a blur of 5 pixels. And the same. And let's set the color to CCC. A little bit different from what the border is. So you can see how we have got this glow effect. So whichever image is active, depending on that, we will get this glow effect on that particular dot. Let's set its transition to all and let's give it a time of 0.3 seconds. So that's it. We can now remove this active class. Actually, we can remove the complete dot element here because we are going to generate it through JavaScript. So now everything is in place and now we can move on to the script.js file to create the carousel. Inside this, first we will grab these elements. So we'll grab these control elements, we'll grab the dots and we'll grab the image. So for that, we will declare some variables. So first let's set let previous and we'll set its value equal to document dot get element by ID and we will select the prev. Now copy this and here we will change this to next. And here again we will change this to next. Now we want to grab the div having the dots. So for that we will do let dots and we'll set its value equal to document.getElementById by ID and here we will say dots. We also want to grab the images. So the images have a class of slides. So we'll grab that. You can see that we have added a class of slide animation which we have not used. We will use this to create a transition effect which I'll show you by the end of the video. So let's grab the slides. So I'll say let slides equal to document dot get elements by class name and here we'll say slides. So now if we open the console and if we log the slides onto the console, we can see that we have got all the images inside a HTML collection. Now we want to generate the dots as per the number of the slides. So for that we will run a for loop and here we'll say for let I equal to 0 and we'll do I less than slides dot length and we'll do I plus plus. Now inside this, we will do dots, which is our dots div dot inner HTML, and we'll set its value equal to the element which we have created here. And we'll set its value equal to the paragraph element which we want to create. So we want to create a paragraph element with with a class of dot. So now you can see that we have generated 3 dots. If we increase the number of the images, for example, if I add one more image here, let's see. You can see that automatically 4 dots are generated. So when we add more images, the number of dots will automatically be generated from the JavaScript. So for now, let's delete it. We also want to grab this dot element now. So we'll create another variable, say let dot, and we will set its value equal to get elements by class name, and we'll set its value equal to dot. Sorry, it should be dot. And yeah, that's good. Now let's declare another variable to check the current slide. For that, we'll create a variable slide index. So let's say slide index, and we'll set its value equal to 1. Now we want that whenever we press these control buttons, our slide should move. So for that, we will add an event listener to the previous and next. So for that, we have already grabbed these buttons in previous and next variable. So we'll take the previous variable and we'll add an event listener, and here we'll say click, and here we'll create an anonymous function, and we'll set its value equal to change slide. So we are going to create another function change slide to control how the slides will be changed, and inside this we'll pass the parameter as -1 because whenever we press the previous button, we want the slide to go backwards. So we want to subtract 1 from the slide index. So inside the change slide, we will be taking the slide index and we're setting its value equal to 1 less than whatever the value it has. Similarly, we'll do the same thing for the next element. So just copy this, and now we'll change this to next. And here we'll say +1. Now let's define our change slide function. So let change slide equal to num. We'll be passing the parameter as num, and we'll create another function show slides to control the image which is visible on the screen. And inside this, we'll set the slide index plus equal to num. So basically what's happening here, we have created a function change slide, and the change slides take a parameter depending on which button we click, the previous or the next button. If we are clicking the previous button, it is taking a parameter as -1, and if we are clicking the next button, it is taking a parameter as +1, and then it passes on to num, and then the change slide function calls another function show slides, and the show slides takes the parameter slide index, in which we add on the num, that is +1 or -1. Now we will define the show slides function. So we can do show slides equal to num, and this num is different from the num here in change slide, right? Again, we are using the arrow function syntax, and here we want to check what is the value of num. For example, if we have 3 images here and the value of num is more than 3, then we need to set it back to 1. And if it is 1 and we click on the previous button and then it is less than 1, then we want to set it back to 3 so that we get a cycling effect. So for that, we will use the ternary operator. We can do num greater than slides.length, and then we can say if it is true, then that means if num is greater than slides.length, then we will set the value of slide index equal to 1. And if it is not true, then we will check whether the value of num is less than 1 or not. So we'll do num less than 1. And if this is true, we want to set its value equal to slides.length. So we'll say num equal to slides.length. Otherwise, we just want to set its value equal to slide index. Now we'll run the for loop, and what we want to do here is we want to set the display property of all the images as none, so that initially none of the images are visible. And then depending on the slide index, we will show one image at a time and one dot will be active at a time. And we'll start the bracket for, and here we'll say slides I dot style dot display equal to none. And we will also remove the active class from all of the dots. So we'll say dot I dot class name equal to dot I dot class name dot replace. We can use the replace method to just replace the active class wherever it is to a blank class. And that's it. Now depending on the slide index, we will show one particular image and we will also show the corresponding dot as active. So we can do slide index -1 because we are doing slide index -1 because we initialize the value of slide index to 1, but the slides is a HTML collection. It starts from 0. So that's why we are doing 1 minus 1 equal to 0. So it will start from 0. And then we can do dot style dot display equal to block. Then we can do dot similarly slide index -1 dot class name. And here we will do string concatenation. So we can do plus equal to, and we will add the active class. Add a space and then active. So active will be added to the element having the class of dot. Now we can just call the show slides function. And let's pass the argument as slide index. And that's it. I think we should have a working carousel. Okay, there is some issue. Let's fix that. Let me see. So this did not work. Let's open the console and see what wrong we have done. And we can't see any errors here. So just let me check. Okay, so I did num equal to slides.length. However, it should be slide index equal to slide.length. So that's fine. Now it should work, I think. Again, it's not running. Let's put a console.log here. And it is not getting printed on the console. That means our for loop is not running. What wrong we have done in the for loop? Okay, I have misspelled the length. It's a silly mistake, sorry. And now you can see that we have a perfectly working carousel. So basically now when we are clicking on the next button, the image is changing, and when we are clicking on the previous button, the image is again getting back to the previous image, and you can see the behavior of the dots as well. The dots are also changing as per the image. And if we add another image, the dots will also be dynamically added. Although our carousel is working, but we have an issue. So you can see when I'm expanding the browser, the layout should change, right? The image should go on the left side and the text should come on the right side, but that is not happening because we have not yet coded for the desktop. And we'll also add a transition between the images so that we can get a better UI, and also we'll make our carousel automatic so that even if the user is not pressing on these next and previous button, the carousel should keep running. So now for that, let's come onto the style.css file. Let's write the code for the desktop version. For that, we'll go to the end and we will add a media query. Here we will say @media only screen, and we can set the breakpoint at 768 pixels. And since we are doing for desktop, we'll do min width. So basically when the screen size is larger than 768 pixels, the layout should change. Now in this, we'll grab the div having the ID of container, and we'll say flex direction to row. Sorry, forgot a pixel here. Okay, and that's it. Okay, we want the text on the right side and the image on the left side, so we'll do row reverse. You can see on the top in the container ID, we have given the flex direction as column. You can see here we have given the flex direction as column, And now we are giving it the flex direction of row so that the flex is expanded in the row. Now you can see that the image and text are a little misaligned. So let's fix that. For that, we'll say text container. And we'll set the align items property to flex start. Similarly, we'll take the image container as well. So we'll say img container. And we'll set its value to flex end. You can see that the padding up is a little more, so we'll reduce that. Okay, this is happening because right now the images are expanding over the row, but we want the images to expand in the column so that each image is centrally aligned to the viewport. So for that, let's go to the image container and let's add a flex direction property and let's set it to column. And now you can see that the image is perfectly aligned at the center. If you don't understand completely the Flexbox model, go and watch the Flexbox tutorial again and you will be able to figure it out. And then you can see now our carousel is perfectly fine and it is responsive. So it is changing the layout whenever it reaches the breakpoint of 768 pixels. Now let's add some animation to it. For that, we have already added a slide animation class. So let's grab that. So I'll say slide animation. And here we'll say animation name to fade. And let's set the animation duration to 2 seconds. Now let's set the keyframes for the fade animation. So we'll say keyframes, fade. And here we'll say from opacity 0 to opacity 1. And that's it. And now we should get a nice fade animation. Okay, it's not working. Okay, we forgot animation duration here. So let's add that. And now everything should be working. And you can see that the carousel has now a nice fade effect. And it is looking beautiful. You can see when the carousel reaches the breakpoint of 768 pixel, it changes the layout and still the carousel is working nice and beautiful. Now we also want to make the carousel automatic. For example, if I'm not clicking on the previous or next button, still the carousel should keep moving. So for that it is very simple. We'll just add set interval method. And in here we'll pass a function. We are using the ES6 arrow function syntax and we'll call the change slide function and we'll pass in 1 here and we'll set the time to 5000 milliseconds. So basically this carousel will automatically change the image after 5 seconds. You can see that the carousel is now changing. You can see that the behavior of dots and everything is perfectly good, and this is how we can make a beautiful carousel. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching the video. Please hit the like button if you learned something. If you are new here, consider subscribing. See you in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.